A little girl interrupted her father's wedding with 5 chilling words. "That's not his baby." What happened next left the entire room speechless and changed their lives forever. The late afternoon sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Andrew Miller's penthouse, bathing the entire room in a warm golden hue. From the 47th floor, the city looked like a mosaic of ambition, steel, glass, and movement. Andrew stood by the window with a glass of sparkling water in his hand, dressed in a light gray tailored suit, the kind that only men like him wore without effort. His brown eyes were calm but distant, and the sharpness of his jawline was softened by the exhaustion he no longer tried to hide. It had been a long road to this moment. 3 years ago, he'd buried the love of his life. Rachel had been everything to him, his anchor, his confidant, his light. Cancer had taken her quickly and cruelly, leaving him with their 5-year-old daughter Lily, a home full of silence, and a life that no longer made sense. Andrew had thrown himself into work, building the company larger than ever, expanding its influence across markets, and turning his grief into fuel. But not even the success could replace what he'd lost. Then came Victoria Brooks. She entered his life like sunlight through a cracked door. Unexpected, undeniable. He met her at a charity fundraiser 2 years ago. She had been standing alone, holding a glass of champagne, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder, and a quiet confidence in her posture that immediately caught his attention. She wasn't like the others who usually hovered around him. She didn't mention his net worth or drop compliments wrapped in manipulation. She talked about art, about her love for vintage books, about her desire to start a family. Andrew had been cautious at first. He was no stranger to superficial charm. But Victoria was patient, affectionate, understanding. She seemed to genuinely care about Lily, bringing little gifts, baking cookies together, asking how school went. Slowly, Andrew began to feel something he thought he'd never feel again: hope. A year into their relationship, Victoria surprised him with news. She was pregnant. He remembered that moment vividly. They'd been in the garden behind his estate, her hands trembling slightly as she held the test in front of him. She looked radiant, vulnerable, and joyful. For a moment, his world tilted. He hadn't planned for this. He hadn't even been sure he could ever love again. But seeing her standing there, carrying life, he thought maybe, just maybe, he could have another chance at family. So he proposed. The wedding was planned quickly. It was to be a private, elegant ceremony at a lakeside estate just outside the city. Not over the top, but tasteful, just enough to honor what they were building together. Lily would be the flower girl, walking down the aisle in a pale blue dress her late mother had once worn to a formal dinner. Andrew thought Rachel would have approved of Victoria. He wanted to believe that. And yet, something didn't sit right. He couldn't explain it. He had dismissed it more than once. A quiet sense of unease, a tightness in his chest whenever Victoria spoke a little too sweetly, smiled a little too widely. She was loving, but sometimes her warmth felt staged, like a script too well rehearsed. Lily had grown quieter in recent months. She didn't speak badly of Victoria, but she never called her mom, even when encouraged. She seemed unsure, guarded. And though Andrew reassured her, gently with patience, something in her eyes told him she was holding something back. That evening, after he finished a business call, Andrew stepped into Lily's room. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, flipping through a picture book she'd already memorized. Her brown hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, her eyes focused and serious. He sat beside her. "Big day coming up," he said with a smile. "You ready to be the best flower girl ever?" She nodded but didn't look up. "You don't seem excited." She hesitated. "I am." He tilted his head. "Is something wrong?" There was a long pause, then she shook her head. "I just miss Mom sometimes." His heart ached at that. He placed a hand on her back gently. "Me too, sweetheart." Another pause. "Dad, do you love Victoria?" He looked at her, surprised by the question. "I think I do." "Why?" Lily's voice was very quiet. "What if someone's pretending?" He blinked. "Pretending?" But she quickly shook her head again. "Nothing. Never mind." Andrew didn't press. She was a child. Maybe it was jealousy. Maybe confusion. He pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "I love you more than anything, Lily, and no one will ever change that." She nodded, leaning into him, but her fingers clutched the edge of the blanket just a little tighter. And far away from them, in a quiet corner of the city, Victoria sat across from another man in a dimly lit cafe, her fingers laced with his across the table. Her laughter was soft, intimate, the sound of a woman in love. But not with the man she was about to marry. The morning air felt unusually heavy for late spring. Clouds hung low in the sky, and the world outside the townhouse windows looked still, expectant. Inside the kitchen, Lily sat at the table, poking at her cereal as the spoon clinked softly against the edge of the bowl. Her father was in the next room, speaking on a conference call, pacing slowly with that quiet intensity she recognized. Across from her sat Marta, the longtime housekeeper and family friend who had helped raise Lily since Rachel's passing. Marta was folding laundry while keeping an eye on the clock. She glanced at Lily every few minutes, occasionally asking if she wanted more juice or toast. Lily only shook her head. She didn't know how to explain what she felt. It was like a weight had settled in her chest, not heavy enough to stop her, but tight enough to make breathing feel strange. Victoria was supposed to arrive soon. She and Lily were meant to go to the tailor to fit her dress one last time before the wedding. Victoria had suggested it herself, saying it would be fun bonding time. Lily hadn't objected. She didn't really object to anything these days. She didn't dislike Victoria. Not exactly. The woman was always kind, always smiling, always giving her little compliments, asking how school was going, calling her sweetheart in a voice that was just soft enough to feel a little too practiced. On the surface, she was perfect, but something about her never felt safe. It wasn't the way her hugs lingered too long, or how her eyes sometimes seemed to drift past Lily, like she was looking through her. It was the way she acted when Andrew wasn't around. She would grow colder, her words clipped, her tone sharper. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't real. Lily had tried to convince herself she was being unfair. Victoria wasn't her mom. No one ever would be. Maybe it was her own heart making it difficult. Maybe she was just scared of letting someone new in. But then came that afternoon, the moment everything changed. It was supposed to be an ordinary shopping trip. Marta had taken her downtown to pick up a few last-minute things for the wedding. Lily liked going places with Marta. She was quiet, kind, and never talked down to her the way adults sometimes did. They went to the bookstore, then the toy store, and finally stopped at a cafe to sit down for a snack. That's when Lily saw her. Across the wide glass storefront of the coffee shop, through the steady stream of pedestrians and chatter, Lily caught a glimpse of Victoria. At first, she wasn't sure. The woman was wearing sunglasses and a long beige coat, standing with her back half turned. Then she laughed. Lily froze. That laugh, it was Victoria's. High, practiced, always a little too perfect. And she wasn't alone. A man stood with her, tall, well-dressed, holding her by the wrist with a kind of casual familiarity that made Lily's skin crawl. He wasn't smiling like a friend. He wasn't standing at a respectful distance. His hand drifted over Victoria's stomach in a way that made Lily's stomach twist. Victoria was laughing. Not nervously, not politely, but freely, intimately, like someone deeply at ease. Lily tugged Marta's sleeve. "Can we go over there?" she asked. Marta looked up, surprised. "Over where?" "Just across the street, please." They crossed together, Marta unaware of what Lily had seen. As they got closer, Lily slowed her steps, keeping behind a pillar outside a bookstore. She peeked carefully. Victoria was now seated with the man at a patio table, leaning in. The man whispered something in her ear, and she giggled again. Lily leaned in farther, and then it happened. Victoria's voice rang out, clear and unmistakable, carried by the wind across the space between them. "After the wedding, we'll have access to everything. He's in love with the idea of family. He thinks this baby is his." The man laughed. "He won't suspect?" Victoria smirked. "He's blind, sweet but blind. Once the deal is locked, I'll convince him to transfer the trust. Then we disappear." Lily's mouth went dry, her hands clenched at her sides. She had heard every word. Her heart beat so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Marta was already walking ahead toward a shop window, unaware that the girl behind her had just had her world fractured. Lily didn't move. She couldn't. The woman who had moved into her home, who touched her father's hand and smiled like she meant it, who was going to become her stepmother, was lying about the baby, about everything. Lily's eyes stung, but she refused to cry. She turned away and walked quietly after Marta. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Lily answered questions in monosyllables, nodded when told, smiled when expected. She said nothing about what she saw. That night, she lay in bed with the blanket pulled to her chin, staring at the ceiling. She thought of her father, how happy he looked when talking about the wedding, how his voice softened whenever he said Victoria's name, how he looked at the baby bump with a mix of sorrow and hope. If she told him, would he believe her? Or would he think she was just scared, just jealous? Would he be angry? She didn't sleep that night. And the next morning she decided she had to find a way to prove it. Because the woman her father loved was playing a role, and Lily wasn't going to let him walk into a lie. Lily didn't speak much the next few days. She moved through her routines like a ghost in her own home, going to school, eating dinner, answering questions politely, even trying to smile when her father looked at her with concern. But inside, something was shifting, something heavy and painful and full of pressure, like a balloon swelling inside her chest. The wedding was in 3 days. Everything was already in motion. The estate staff were preparing decorations and rehearsals. Victoria's designer had delivered her gown. The florist had arrived with boxes of white lilies and pale roses. Laughter and warmth filled the house every time Victoria entered a room. She rubbed her belly affectionately and spoke to Andrew with soft words and a glowing smile. Everyone said she looked radiant. Lily watched all of it unfold like she was standing behind glass. She felt small, powerless, invisible. No one saw her fidgeting fingers. No one saw the way her eyes followed Victoria like a hawk. She wasn't just scared anymore. She was angry, furious even, that this woman was lying to her father, that she dared to pretend, to act, to carry on a game while her father, sweet, loyal, gentle, believed every word. But Lily knew she couldn't just tell him. Not like this. Not now. He wouldn't believe it. He loved Victoria. He trusted her. He wanted this baby. He needed it, maybe more than he realized. If Lily went to him with just a story, she'd be brushed aside. He'd think she was trying to sabotage the wedding because she missed her mom. He'd smile, kneel beside her, say something soft like he always did, then tell her it was just her imagination. But it wasn't. She had heard it with her own ears. She had seen Victoria with that man, the way she touched him, the words she said, the certainty in her voice that this baby was someone else's, and that soon she'd disappear with everything. No, Lily needed more. She needed proof. 2 days before the wedding, she made a plan. She asked Marta to take her back to the same shopping district, pretending she wanted to buy a gift for Victoria. A surprise. Marta, touched by the gesture, happily agreed. Lily barely slept the night before. She charged her phone, cleared space for a video, and rehearsed how she'd hold it, where she'd stand, what she'd say if anyone asked questions. When they arrived, she walked slowly through the shops, eyes scanning, heart pounding. She remembered the cafe, the spot where it had happened before. She dragged Marta to a bookstore nearby and said she wanted to stay there a while. Marta sat in a reading nook with a novel while Lily crept back toward the glass-fronted cafe and waited. 30 minutes passed. An hour. Lily was about to give up when she saw her. Victoria, same coat, same sunglasses. And beside her, him, the same man. Lily ducked behind a large planter and shakily pulled out her phone, her heart beating so loud she could barely hear anything else. She pressed record. The screen shook in her hands, but she forced herself to hold still. Victoria and the man sat at the edge of the patio, facing each other closely. They spoke in low voices, but the breeze carried the sound. Lily slowly inched closer. Once the vows are done, we've got access to everything, Victoria said, sipping her drink. He's obsessed with family, with making this work. He thinks I'm this angel sent to heal him. The man snorted. You've always been good at that. She smirked. You think I'm keeping the baby for him? I'm not stupid. This child is yours. He leaned back. And what? You'll just walk away once the ink is dry? I'll wait 6 months, maybe a year. Then I'll tell him I need space or a retreat, something poetic. He'll cry, maybe even beg, and I'll already be gone. Lily's breath caught. She kept recording. Every word. Her hands were cold, her knees weak, But she didn't stop until Victoria rose from her seat and walked into a nearby boutique. The man followed. Lily ended the recording and quickly slipped back into the bookstore, her face pale, heart racing. Marta didn't notice. She just smiled and asked if Lily had found something. Lily shook her head. Let's go home. All that evening, she stayed quiet. She watched Victoria walk around the house like nothing had happened. She listened to her father talk about the vows he was writing. He sounded happy, and it broke Lily's heart, because tomorrow he would wake up ready to marry a woman who was planning to destroy him. And if she said nothing, he would fall. So that night, Lily sat on her bed, holding her phone, staring at the saved video, and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I tell him." But even then, she wasn't sure how. Would he stop the wedding? Would he believe her? Or would she have to interrupt it herself, in front of everyone? Whatever it would take, she was ready. Because this time, she wasn't just protecting her father, she was saving the truth. The morning of the wedding came far too quickly. Lily sat on the edge of her bed, still in her pajamas, watching the soft light spread across her bedroom wall like a slow-moving tide. She hadn't slept. Not really. She drifted in and out of uneasy dreams where she tried to speak and no one could hear her, where Victoria smiled wider than a human should, and her father walked away from her with a stranger's face. She held her phone in both hands. The screen was dark now, but she knew the video was still there. Every word, every sentence. She'd watched it at least 20 times during the night until she could recite Victoria's voice from memory. There was no denying it, no misinterpretation. It was real. It was proof. The house was already buzzing. Through her window, Lily could hear voices and movement below. The florist had arrived. The wedding planner was shouting gentle instructions into a headset. Footsteps crossed the marble entryway. Every so often, someone laughed too loudly. It was all happening. And yet, it felt fake. Lily pressed her forehead to her knees, trying to breathe. She had to tell him. She had to find the right moment. But what would it look like? Would she go into his room while he was getting ready, hand him the phone, say, "Please watch this," and hope he wouldn't brush her off? What if Victoria was there? What if he told her to stop making things up again? She was only 8. She knew what adults thought when kids talked about feelings. They meant well, but they always assumed kids didn't understand. But she understood. She understood betrayal. She understood loyalty. She understood what it meant to protect someone you loved, even when they didn't ask you to. There was a knock at the door. It was Marta, smiling warmly. "Time to get ready, little one. Your dress is waiting downstairs. You'll be the most beautiful flower girl this estate has ever seen." Lily nodded slowly. "Okay." She dressed without protest. The dress was pale blue, with a satin ribbon around the waist. It had been her mother's, resized by a seamstress. Andrew had found it in a storage box and cried when he gave it to her. "Your mom would have loved this," he'd whispered. That dress meant something. Wearing it today felt both beautiful and deeply wrong. In the mirror, Lily looked almost like a porcelain doll. Neat curls, polished shoes. A smile tugged at her lips. But she couldn't make it stay. There was no room in her chest for pretending. Downstairs, Victoria was radiant in her gown, surrounded by people helping her adjust the lace and veil. Her baby bump was pronounced, glowing beneath the fabric, the centerpiece of every glance and compliment. She looked like the perfect bride. To anyone else, she was glowing with maternal joy and love. But Lily saw differently. She saw the cold flicker in her eyes when no one else was watching. She saw how Victoria avoided her gaze. And Lily wondered, for a second, if Victoria knew, if she suspected something had changed, if she felt the phone in Lily's dress pocket and feared it might contain the one thing she couldn't fake her way out of. Then Andrew appeared at the top of the stairs. Tall, handsome, calm. He looked every bit the groom from a magazine cover. His light-colored suit matched Lily's dress perfectly. His brown eyes sparkled when he looked at her. For a brief moment, Lily wanted to run to him, hug him, tell him everything. But she didn't. He was surrounded by too many people, smiling guests, photographers, a sea of congratulations. She couldn't do it here, not in front of everyone, not yet. The ceremony began as the guests took their seats beneath a canopy of ivory roses in the estate's back garden. Everything was perfect, too perfect. Victoria took her place at the end of the aisle, her hand resting on her belly, her lips curled in a soft, radiant smile. Andrew stood waiting for her at the altar. The music played, gentle and classical. Lily walked slowly down the aisle, scattering petals from a silver basket, her heart pounding with each step. She reached the front, took her place beside the altar, and clutched the phone tightly in her palm, hidden beneath the folds of her dress. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke of love, of second chances, of the beauty of starting again. Andrew's gaze stayed fixed on Victoria, warm and full of trust. And Lily couldn't take it anymore. She didn't care if it was wrong. She didn't care who was watching. She couldn't let it happen. When the officiant turned and said, "Victoria, do you take Andrew?" Lily stepped forward, voice trembling, but loud enough to cut through the entire garden. "Wait!" Every head turned. A wave of confusion swept over the guests. Lily's chest rose and fell rapidly. Her hands shook. She took another step forward, her eyes on her father, not Victoria. "She's lying," Lily said, her voice stronger now. "That baby's not yours. I can prove it." Victoria's face froze. "What are you saying?" Andrew asked, stunned. "Lily!" "What?" Lily held out the phone with both hands. "Please, just watch this. Please." The world seemed to go still. For a moment, no one moved. Then Andrew stepped down from the altar, took the phone from her gently, and tapped the screen. The video began to play. Victoria's voice filled the speakers, unmistakable and cruel. "After the vows are done, we've got access to everything. The baby isn't his. We disappear." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Andrew's face went pale. Victoria stepped forward, stumbling for words. That's not. She's a child. She doesn't understand." But it was too late. Andrew's eyes didn't leave Lily's. He saw the truth in them, the pain, the courage. And in that moment, the entire illusion shattered. He didn't need any more evidence. He looked at the officiant. "This wedding is over." Victoria gasped. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Security moved quietly to the sides. The groom had spoken. The ceremony was done. Andrew knelt in front of Lily and pulled her into his arms. "Thank you," he whispered. "You saved me." And Lily finally let herself cry, not out of fear, but relief. The silence that followed the canceled wedding was unlike anything Lily had ever known. The guests slowly dispersed after the video played, most in stunned, hushed whispers. Some offered Andrew awkward nods of sympathy. Others gave quick, embarrassed glances and left without a word. The garden, once filled with music and laughter, now echoed with the strange emptiness that comes after something shattering. Victoria was gone within the hour. She hadn't spoken to Andrew again, hadn't tried to explain, hadn't fought. Security escorted her off the property without resistance. The man from the video was never seen again. Some said he had left town that same day. Others whispered he was a con artist, someone who had used Victoria for her proximity to wealth. But none of that mattered now. The ceremony had been dismantled. The flowers taken down, the cake untouched. And inside the house, Lily sat in her bedroom alone, staring at the small phone in her hands, the device that had changed everything. She didn't know if she had done the right thing. Yes, she had told the truth. Yes, her father had believed her. But the look on his face, the devastation in his eyes as he watched the woman he loved betray him in front of their family and friends, that image would never leave her. Lily had protected him, yes, but she had also broken him. She curled up beneath the covers and hugged her knees to her chest, afraid to leave the room, afraid he might be angry, afraid he might not be. She didn't know which possibility scared her more. Downstairs, Andrew was still in his wedding suit, now crumpled and stained from the dirt of the garden path. He sat alone in the living room, elbows on his knees, staring blankly at the dying light outside the window. The silence of the house felt suffocating. He had believed in something again, allowed himself to hope, allowed himself to want a future. And it had been a lie. Worse, he hadn't seen it. Lily had. The thought cut deeper than anything else. His daughter, the one person he had sworn to protect, had been the one protecting him. He didn't even hear Marta when she walked in. She stood quietly in the doorway, hands folded, watching him with gentle eyes. "She's still in her room," she said softly. "Hasn't moved." Andrew rubbed his hands over his face, then stood slowly, as if the weight of the day had aged him by years. "Thank you," he murmured. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Outside Lily's room, he hesitated. Then quietly he knocked. Lily? No answer. Can I come in? Still nothing. He opened the door gently. She was curled up on the bed, her face turned to the wall, the blanket pulled up to her chin. He crossed the room slowly, sat on the edge of the bed, and rested his hand on her back. I'm not mad, he said softly. I promise you, I'm not mad. Her voice was so small he almost didn't hear it. I didn't want to hurt you. Andrew closed his eyes, trying to steady the storm inside him. You didn't, he whispered. You saved me. She turned toward him, eyes red, lashes wet. I didn't know if you believed me. I almost didn't, he said, voice breaking. And that scares me more than anything, that I almost trusted a lie more than I trusted you. Lily sat up slowly, her small hands wringing the edge of the blanket. She didn't want to be my mom, she said. She only wanted you. Andrew nodded, unable to speak for a moment. I saw it, Lily continued, but I thought you'd think I was being selfish, or just missing mom too much. He reached out and took her hands in his. You are the bravest person I know, he said. You could have stayed quiet, but you didn't. You told the truth, even when it was hard. Lily's lower lip trembled. Are you sad? Yes, he said honestly, but not at you, never at you. He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly, burying his face in her hair. She clung to him like she had when she was smaller, like he was the only safe place in the world. They sat like that for a long time. Eventually she spoke again. Does this mean we'll always be just the two of us? Andrew pulled back slightly and looked into her eyes. No, he said, not always. But whoever comes next, they'll have to earn it. Both of us. They'll have to love you like I do. Like your mom did. Lily nodded. I think that's okay. That night, they didn't eat dinner at the table. They sat in the living room with takeout boxes on their laps, watching old cartoons wrapped in blankets. And for the first time in days, they laughed. Not loudly, not carelessly, but together. And that was enough for now. In the weeks following the canceled wedding, the estate grew quiet again. The staff worked in silence, unsure of how to move around their boss without making noise, without drawing attention to what had happened. The florals that had once filled the garden were gone. The white linens had been packed away. The taste of celebration had long since vanished. And yet, the house didn't feel broken. It felt like it was breathing again. Andrew no longer woke with the weight of pretending. He didn't have to force a smile or perform the role of the content fiancé. He didn't have to convince himself that his life was heading in the right direction. He had been wrong, yes, but now he was free, and he owed that to Lily. They spent more time together than they had in months. Morning breakfast that once felt rushed now became slow and quiet, shared over pancakes or cereal at the kitchen counter. They talked about school, about books, about cartoons. Lily opened up more each day, her voice lighter, freer, as if a knot in her chest had finally come undone. They walked together through the park in the early evenings, sometimes in silence, sometimes with Lily holding Andrew's hand as she told him about her dreams, some real, some ridiculous. He never interrupted. He just listened, fully present, no longer distracted by an upcoming event or a woman who had always needed just a little too much of his attention. Andrew hadn't returned to the dating world. Not yet. The idea of trust still felt fragile, but somewhere deep inside he felt a shift. Not just a longing to heal, but a readiness to live again. Not perform, not chase, just be. One Tuesday morning, while waiting in the pediatrician's office with Lily for her annual checkup, Andrew found himself pacing near the magazine rack, distractedly glancing at a parenting article he had no intention of reading. The door opened behind him. Lily Miller? Andrew turned. Standing in the doorway was a woman in navy scrubs. Her hair was pulled into a neat low ponytail, her eyes a bright and startling gray blue, and her smile was warm without being forced. She looked up and locked eyes with him for just a second before glancing at Lily. I'm Dr. Meline Reeves. Ready for me? Lily stood and nodded politely. Andrew followed. Meline was calm, confident, and great with Lily. She spoke to her directly, never talking over her or down to her, explaining every step of the checkup with patience and kindness. Lily was completely at ease, even laughing at one point as Meline used the stethoscope and joked about finding a heartbeat full of secrets. Andrew couldn't help but smile. When the exam was over, Madeline turned to him and asked a few questions about Lily's medical history. They spoke easily, naturally, like people who'd known each other longer than 10 minutes. No awkward pauses, no posturing. She didn't blink at his name. She didn't ask what company he ran. She didn't even glance at the watch on his wrist. She just saw him. As they left the office, Lily tugged his sleeve. She was nice, she said. Not fake nice. Real nice, and Andrew looked down. Yeah, he agreed. She was. 3 days later, Madeline called personally to follow up on one of Lily's lab results. It was minor, nothing urgent, but she wanted to let him know directly. The call lasted longer than it needed to. He heard the smile in her voice. She heard something gentle in his. And that was the beginning. He didn't chase her. She didn't flirt. But once a week became twice. A call turned into coffee, then a walk, then a long afternoon spent at the children's library, where Lily pulled book after book off the shelves while the two adults talked at a table by the window. Andrew told Madeline everything, carefully, honestly, about the wedding, about Victoria, about Rachel, his late wife, about Lily's strength. Madeline didn't flinch. She listened. She understood in a way no one else had. She wasn't impressed by his money or last name. She didn't ask about press coverage. She asked about his favorite food, his childhood, the sound Lily made when she laughed too hard. And Andrew found himself laughing again, really laughing, for the first time in months. One Sunday evening, Madeline joined them for dinner. Lily helped set the table, nervously checking the forks twice, choosing her best plates. Andrew cooked. Nothing fancy, just roast chicken and garlic mashed potatoes. It was simple. It was enough. They sat outside afterward under the soft glow of patio lights, the scent of lavender drifting through the air. Lily went inside to grab her coloring book, leaving Andrew and Madeline alone for a few minutes. He looked at her. She looked back. I didn't think I'd trust someone again, he admitted. Not like this. Not so soon. Madeline tilted her head. That's okay. Trust doesn't have to rush, but it's already there, isn't it? He nodded. They didn't kiss. Not yet. But something passed between them. A quiet promise, a spark that didn't need fireworks. Inside, Lily watched from the window and smiled. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to, because she knew. This was different. This was real. And this time, they were all walking towards something honest. Autumn crept in slowly, painting the trees outside the estate in shades of amber, gold, and rust. The air turned crisper with each passing day, and the mornings carried the scent of cinnamon and damp leaves. It was the season Rachel had loved most, and every year since her passing, Andrew had braced for the quiet ache it brought. But this year, it felt different. He stood in the kitchen one chilly Saturday morning, barefoot, wearing a faded college sweatshirt and pouring pancake batter onto the griddle. The scent of butter and vanilla filled the air. He moved with practiced ease, humming under his breath, still half asleep, but peaceful. From the living room came the sound of Lily laughing. She was curled up on the couch with Madeline, wrapped in a fuzzy blanket, watching an animated movie they'd seen a dozen times, the kind with talking animals and dramatic music. Madeline did the voices, badly, and Lily laughed at every exaggerated accent. Andrew peeked in from the doorway, smiling to himself. They looked like they belonged there. No awkwardness, no tension, just two people genuinely enjoying each other. The ease between them made his chest feel tight in the best way. When breakfast was ready, they gathered around the kitchen island, eating pancakes and scrambled eggs off mismatched plates. Lily talked nonstop about a school project, a class pet hamster, and a dream she'd had about flying. Madeline listened like everything Lily said was poetry. After breakfast, Andrew and Madeline cleaned up, while Lily disappeared into her room to work on a drawing. As they stood side by side at the sink, hands brushing now and then, Andrew felt a calmness he hadn't known in years. He looked over at her, studying the soft curve of her smile, the light in her eyes. You're good with her, he said quietly. Madeline raised an eyebrow with mock offense. Obviously, I'm amazing. He laughed, then turned serious. I mean it. She trusts you. She's easy to love, Madeline said, placing a rinse plate on the drying rack. So are you, you know. Andrew paused, his hands in the sudsy water. Am I? She looked at him. Yes, she said. You just don't believe it yet. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he wiped his hands on a towel and leaned against the counter. After Rachel died, I thought that part of my life was over. The warm part, the soft part, everything felt like survival. Even when Victoria came along, it was like I was trying to paint over grief with something glossy. And now? Meline asked gently. Now, he glanced toward the hallway where Lily had disappeared. Now it feels like things are growing again. Not replacing, just healing. Meline stepped closer. Her voice was low. Healing doesn't erase what came before. It just makes space for what comes next. They stood close for a long moment, the air between them charged and calm at once. He wanted to kiss her. He could see she felt it too. But instead of rushing, he simply reached out and took her hand. Her fingers curled into his. In the following weeks, Meline became a quiet part of their routine. Not every day, not always planned. Sometimes she dropped by after her shifts with leftovers from her favorite bakery. Sometimes they met at the park. Sometimes she and Lily read together in the sunroom for hours while Andrew finished work nearby, listening to their laughter through the open door. What surprised him most was how natural it all felt. There was no pressure, no grand declarations, just comfort, stability, trust, and love, slowly, steadily, began to take root. One afternoon, as they raked leaves in the backyard, Lily ran up to Meline with a small notebook in her hand. "Look what I made." Inside was a hand-drawn comic titled Our Family. There were 3 stick figures on the first page, a man in a suit, a girl with curly hair, and a woman with a ponytail holding a stethoscope. Meline smiled. "Is that me?" Lily nodded. "You're in all the pages now." Andrew, watching from across the lawn, felt his heart squeeze. Later that evening, when Lily had gone to bed and the house was quiet, he and Meline sat on the couch with mugs of tea, the soft hum of rain tapping at the windows. "I think she already sees you as family," Andrew said, voice soft, thoughtful. Meline looked down at her mug. "And what about you?" He didn't hesitate. "I do too." She met his eyes. "You sure?" "Yes." A beat of silence passed between them, heavy and sweet. "I'm not looking for perfect," he said. "Not anymore. I just want real. And you're the most real thing that's happened to us in a long time." This time he did kiss her. Slow, intentional, like something true finally unfolding. She kissed him back. And in that quiet, rainy evening, with the echoes of Lily's laughter still lingering in the walls, Andrew knew this was no second chance. This was a new beginning. The day of Lily's 9th birthday dawned with golden light spilling through the windows and the scent of something sweet baking in the kitchen. The house was decorated simply but lovingly. Balloons floated lazily near the ceiling. Streamers hung across the entryway. On the dining table, a cake sat waiting, vanilla with pale blue frosting and tiny daisies made of sugar, just the way Lily liked it. She'd helped plan everything, of course, down to the exact ribbon that tied around the gift boxes and the playlist that quietly played in the background. But what she didn't know, what no one had told her, was that today, her birthday wasn't the only reason hearts were pounding. Andrew stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt for the 3rd time. His palms were damp. He wasn't nervous about being ready. He was nervous about what he was about to do. In the inside pocket of his blazer was a small velvet box. Simple, elegant, with a ring that wasn't flashy, but was full of meaning. He looked at his own reflection for a long time. Then he smiled. Downstairs, Meline arrived just as guests began to trickle in. Close friends, classmates, a few neighbors who had watched Lily grow up. She wore a pale cream blouse and dark jeans, her hair tied back in a low braid, and a soft shimmer of anticipation in her eyes. She carried a gift bag in one hand and a bouquet of fresh tulips in the other. When she stepped through the door, Lily ran to greet her, throwing her arms around her waist. "You're here," Lily beamed. "Finally!" Meline laughed, hugging her tight. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Andrew watched from the hallway, unnoticed. He saw the way Lily leaned into Meline with natural ease, how Meline instinctively adjusted the girl's collar like a mother would. It wasn't forced, it wasn't rehearsed, it just was. After the candles were blown out and the cake served, Lily opened her gifts at the center of the room. Stuffed animals, books, art supplies, glitter pens. She was glowing, flushed with joy, surrounded by people who loved her. Then Andrew cleared his throat gently. Everyone turned. He stepped forward, one hand behind his back, and smiled at his daughter. Lily, he said, his voice warm but slightly unsteady. Do you know what my favorite day of the year is? Lily tilted her head. My birthday? He nodded. Yes, because it's the day you made me a dad. The day everything in my life really started. She smiled, unsure where he was going with this. Andrew continued, turning slightly toward Madeline, who now stood quietly beside them. I thought I would never have that again. That kind of joy, that kind of meaning. But then someone came into our lives who reminded me that love doesn't disappear when you lose it. It changes shape. It waits. And sometimes it walks right into your living room wearing scrubs and carrying too many books. Lily giggled. Madeline blushed slightly, eyes wide. Andrew dropped to one knee. The room fell absolutely still. Madeline brought a hand to her mouth. I'm not just asking you, Andrew said, looking up at her. I'm asking both of you. He looked at Lily. You once asked me if we'd always be just the two of us, and I didn't have an answer then. But now I do. We'll always be three. If you'll both let me. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Not massive, not showy, just beautiful, timeless. Madeline's eyes filled with tears. Lily, without missing a beat, shouted, Say yes! Madeline laughed through the tears, her voice catching. Yes, of course, yes. The guests erupted in applause, a few wiping away tears. Lily jumped into Madeline's arms, hugging her tightly. Andrew joined them, wrapping both of them up in one long embrace. That night, long after the last guest had left and the cake was reduced to crumbs, the three of them sat on the back porch wrapped in a single blanket. The stars stretched out above them, and the air smelled like wood and leaves. Lily rested her head on Madeline's shoulder. Do we get a new last name now? She asked sleepily. Madeline smiled. Only if you want one. I think we should all match, Lily murmured. Andrew chuckled softly. Then we'll all match. No cameras, no headlines, no designer gowns. Just one man, one woman, and a little girl who had once stood up in front of a crowd to tell the truth. Because she believed her father deserved real love. And this time, they had it. Not the kind that looks perfect in pictures. The kind that stays. The kind that grows. The kind that begins quietly and ends with forever. The ending of The Wedding Truth isn't about a grand finale. It's about quiet victory. It's about truth whispered louder than any lie. About love that grows patiently where brokenness once lived. For me, this story was never just about betrayal or weddings or dramatic confessions. It was about courage, the kind that lives in the smallest hearts and shows up when no one else dares to speak. Lily, at only 8 years old, became the moral center of the story. Her decision to speak out, to defend her father even when she knew it might shatter everything, is what saved him. She is a reminder that children see more than we think, and that their instincts, when rooted in love, are often braver than any adult's logic. Andrew's arc is one of quiet transformation. He begins as a man who has already lost too much and clings to the idea of hope in the form of another relationship. But by the end, he realizes that real love doesn't need to be flashy or convenient. It needs to be honest. His ability to let go of illusion and embrace something slower, deeper, and messier is what makes him worthy of a second chance. Madeline enters not to fix anything, but to simply be present, grounded, kind. Her love isn't sweeping or dramatic. It's earned step by step. That, to me, is more powerful than any fairy tale romance. This story closes not with spectacle, but with truth, trust, and the kind of family that chooses each other. And sometimes that's the most extraordinary ending of all.